The rain pounded the attic roof as I clutched a dusty box, my father's last gift to me, a collection of love letters he wrote to my mother. Their ink faded like the promises they held. That morning, 10 years after he walked out, I learned the truth. Those letters, my only bridge to the man who sang me lullabies in his gravelly voice, were gone. Burned to ashes by a secret I never saw coming. Growing up, I was the shadow in their fractured love story, always chasing the warmth of a family that never quite fit. Those letters were my proof he'd once been more than silence and slammed doors. Now, their loss felt like losing him again. Only this time, it carried a weight that could unravel everything I thought I knew. Who destroyed them? And what was my father hiding that could tear our family apart for good? I'm diving into this painful mystery, and I need you with me. Share your story in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe. Let's uncover the truth together. Rain hammered, the attic like a fist, each drop a jab at the years I'd lost, the kind of years that leave you hollowed out, a husk of who you might have been. I knelt on splintered floorboards, their jagged edges biting through my jeans, clutching a box that once held my father's soul. Those letters he wrote to my mother, Clara, their ink a fading heartbeat, were all I had left of him. Not the man who walked out when I was 12, leaving me with a mother who turned to stone, but the man who'd once loved her so fiercely it spilled onto pages I'd memorized like scripture. The attic reeked of mildew and regret, the kind that clings to your skin, seeping into your pores until you're part of the decay. I found the box behind my mother's warped vinyls. Dylan, Joni, records she'd played until the needle wore, them thin. The tape sealing it was brittle, like the lies it hid, flaking under my nails as I clawed it open. I expected the weight of love, the familiar crinkle of paper, but my fingers sank into ash, soft and cold, like a grave I'd dug myself. A scorched scrap clung to the edge. Clara, I never wanted this. My father's scrawl, jagged as his choices. My chest tightened, a vice squeezing out air, because those letters were my only link to him, the man who'd vanished, leaving a wound that never scarred, just bled quietly in the dark. The attic groaned, its beams shifting like it knew what I'd lost, like it was whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I sat back, ash smearing my palms, and stared at the box, its emptiness a betrayal sharper than his leaving. Those letters were my proof he'd been more than silence and slammed doors, more than the ghost who haunted my childhood. I'd spent years imagining them, his words to her, full of promises he couldn't keep, love he couldn't hold. Now they were gone, burned by someone who wanted his voice erased. Who? My mother, dead 2 years, her eyes cold even in memory? My sister Lena, with her perfect life and guarded smiles? Or someone else, someone I didn't yet know? I pressed the scrap to my lips, tasting ash and regret, the bitter tang of a truth I couldn't unsee. The rain screamed outside, a chorus of rage that matched the storm in my chest. I'd been 12 when he left, old enough to feel the cut, but too young to understand it. Those letters were my tether, my way to know the man who'd sung me lullabies, in his gravelly voice, who'd promised forever before he broke it. Now, their absence felt like losing him again, but worse, like someone had stolen him from me, burned away the only piece I had left. What had he never wanted? To leave? To hurt us? Or something darker, something that made someone torch his words? The attic's shadows pressed closer, and I wondered if I'd been wrong about him all along, or if someone had burned those letters to keep me from a truth that could unravel everything. My hands shook, the scrap crumbling at the edges, and I knew this was just the start. Something was coming, something I couldn't outrun, and it tasted like ash. I whispered "Dad" into the dark, my voice cracking like the kitchen floorboards. a prayer to a god I'd stopped believing in years ago. The word felt wrong, like a stranger's name, heavy with the weight of a man who'd left me at 12. His absence a bruise that never faded. The box sat on the table where we'd once eaten as a family, its ash smudging my fingers, a stain I couldn't wash off. This was our table. Burnt pancakes, spilled milk, laughter that died when he walked out. Now, it was just me and the ghost of him, the man who'd sung me to sleep with a gravelly voice that felt like home. That voice was a lie now, wasn't it? I stared at my mother's photo on the mantel, her eyes sharp, unyielding. Even 2 years after cancer took her, she'd known something, carried it to her grave, her silence louder than the rain still pounding outside. Those letters, his letters, were my only way to understand the man she'd loved, then hated. I'd memorized one before it was lost. Clara, I broke my promise, but not my love. What promise? To stay? To protect us? The ash in the box mocked me, its gray dust a reminder that someone had burned my answers. I called Lena, my older sister, her number a reflex I regretted the second. She answered. "Ellie, stop chasing ghosts," she snapped, her voice cold, polished like her perfect life. "He's gone. Let it go." But I heard the tremor beneath her words, the kind that comes from hiding something sharp. Lena had always been the good daughter, the one who moved on, built a life with a husband and a house that screamed success. I was the mess, the one still picking at scabs. "Did you know about the letters?" I asked, but she hung up, leaving me with static and suspicion. The kitchen felt too small, the walls closing in like they wanted to swallow me. I traced the box's edges, its emptiness a mirror of the hole he'd left. I remembered his lullabies, the way his voice wrapped around me, promising safety in a world that wasn't. Now, those songs felt like a con, a pretty lie to keep me quiet while he planned his escape. But why burn the letters? Why erase him? My mother's face stared from the mantel, her lips sealed, and I wondered if she'd done it, if her anger had turned to fire. The attic's shadow loomed above, its creaks a summons I couldn't ignore. I wanted to climb back up, to scream into its darkness, but my legs wouldn't move. The ash on my fingers felt alive, like it carried his voice, his secrets. I'd spent years hating him, but now I wasn't sure. Was he the villain, or was he running from something worse? Lena's dismissal, the ash, the scrap. They were pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve but couldn't leave alone. The house hummed, its silence louder than the rain, urging me to dig deeper, even as my heart begged me to stop. I was in too deep now, and the truth, whatever it was waiting to cut me open. The house hummed with secrets, its creaks a language I couldn't crack, like it was whispering my name in a code meant to break me. I stood in my mother's room, the air thick with her absence, her perfume still lingering like a ghost. The rain hadn't stopped, its rhythm a heartbeat that matched the panic in my chest. I was alone, but the house felt alive, its walls watching, judging, waiting for me to find something I wasn't supposed to. Those letters, my father's heart on paper, were gone, reduced to ash, and I needed to know why. The attic's groan echoed in my bones, a warning or an invitation, I couldn't tell. I tore through her drawers, finding nothing but faded receipts, lipsticks worn to nubs and a diary locked tight, its clasp a taunt. Each empty drawer was a slap, proof she'd hidden herself from me, even in death. My mother, Clara, had always been a fortress, her love sharp, conditional. I'd been the shadow in her world, the daughter who reminded her of him. Now, I was digging through her life, chasing a man who'd left us both. A knock at the door startled me. Mrs. Callahan, the neighbor, stood there, her eyes nervous, holding a dish like an apology. "Ellie, some truths cut deeper than you think," she said, her voice low, like she'd seen what I was chasing. Back in the room, I found a photo tucked in an old book. My parents, young, laughing, his arm around her like she was his world. On the back, his scrawl, "Clara, we'll make it right." My throat burned. Make what right? Their love? Their mistakes? The diary's lock glinted, and I remembered a key in Lena's keepsake box, a glint of silver I'd ignored years ago. My hand shook as I realized it might fit, might open the truth I both craved and feared. The house creaked again, louder, like it was urging me on or begging me to stop. That night, I couldn't sleep. The attic rattled with footsteps, slow, deliberate, like someone pacing above my head. I climbed the stairs, heart pounding, the flashlight shaking in my hand. The box sat there, its ashes untouched, mocking me with their silence. No one was there, but the air felt heavy, charged, like the house was holding its breath. I whispered, "Dad?" And the word echoed, unanswered. The scrap, "Clara, I never wanted this," burned in my mind. What didn't he want? To leave? To hurt us? Or to be caught? I sank to the floor, the attic's chill seeping into me. Mrs. Callahan's warning, Lena's dismissal, the photo's promise. They were threads in a web I was tangled in. The house knew something, its walls whispering. Truths I wasn't ready to hear. I'd spent years hating him, blaming him for the silence that swallowed our family. But now I wondered if he'd been running from something bigger, something that made someone burn his words. The diary waited downstairs, its lock a challenge, and I knew I'd open it, even if it broke me. Have you ever felt a secret in your family? Like a shadow you couldn't shake? Share below. I'm scared I'm not alone. Lena's apartment reeked of lavender and lies, the kind of lies you tell yourself to sleep at night. I stood in her pristine living room, the key dangling from my fingers like a grenade pin, its silver, glinting under her two bright lamps. Her smile was tight, a crack in her perfect facade, and I felt the old resentment flare. Lena, the sister who'd moved on, who'd built a life while I drowned in our past. The rain outside was a dull roar, but inside, it was just us. The air thick with unspoken truths. I held up the key and her eyes flickered, a deer caught in headlights. "You're tearing us apart, Ellie," she said, snatching the key, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Why can't you leave it alone?" But her hands trembled, betraying, the calm she wore like armor. I pressed her about the letters, the ashes, the scrap that said our father never wanted this, whatever this was. She deflected, talking about her husband, her job, her life that screamed, "I'm fine without you." I wasn't buying it. Lena had always known more, seen more, and I was done with her half-truths. Then I saw it. A burn scar on her wrist, fresh pink peeking from her sleeve. "What's that?" I asked, my voice low, accusing. She yanked her sleeve down, her face hardening. "Get out!" she snapped, but her eyes were wet, like she was drowning in something she couldn't name. I left, the key's weight still in my pocket, a ghost of the one she'd taken. Back home, the house felt colder, its shadows sharper. In my mailbox, an unsigned note waited, scrawled in black ink. "Stop digging, or you'll lose more than..." letters. My pulse spiked, my skin prickling with the sense of being watched. That night, I dreamed of him, my father, a blur in the shadows, his gravelly voice whispering, "I had no choice, Ellie." I woke gasping, the key's shape pressed into my palm, a bruise I'd given myself. Lena's scar, the note, the dream. They were pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve but couldn't ignore. She'd burned the letters, hadn't she? Or helped someone who did. But why? To protect me? Or to hide her own guilt? The house creaked, its walls leaning in. and I wondered if they'd seen her do it, seen her light the match that erased him. I sat at the kitchen table, the box's ashes, staring back and felt the truth clawing at me. Lena wasn't just hiding from our past. She was guarding it, locking it away like the diary I knew that key would open. My father's absence had always been the wound, but now I saw it was bigger, a web of secrets that tangled us all. The we. Notes warning echoed. Lose more than letters. What else could I lose? My sister? My sanity? Or something worse? Something that made my father run? The attic groaned above, calling me back, but I stayed put, the key burning a hole in my pocket, knowing I'd use it, knowing it would cut deeper than I could stand. The diary opened with a snap, its clasp giving way like a bone breaking, and I felt the air shift, like I'd unlocked something that wanted to stay hidden. My mother's words spilled out, jagged and raw, a blade of truth I wasn't ready to hold. I sat on her bed, the mattress sagging under me, the house creaking like it was mourning with me. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the chill in my bones was sharper, fed by the pages I held. Those letters were gone, burned to ash, but this diary, it was her voice, her secrets, and I was terrified of what it would say. She wrote of the night he left, her words venomous. He swore he'd keep us safe, but he broke us instead. My father, the man who'd sung me lullabies, was a liar in her eyes, his promises as empty as the box upstairs. Then a name appeared, Victor, a stranger who knew too much and had to be silenced. My stomach twisted, the words blurring as I read them again. Victor. Who was he? A friend? An enemy? Someone my parents had buried to keep their secrets safe? The diary felt heavy, like it was pulling me under, drowning me in their sins. In the margins, a phone number scrawled in her frantic hand. I dialed it, my heart hammering, and a man answered, his voice rough, wary. "Who's this?" I said my father's name, and the line went dead, the silence louder than any scream. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking, the room too small, the walls too close. Lena texted then, her words a plea. "Ellie, you're in danger. Stop." But it wasn't love in her text. It was fear, sharp and desperate, like she was caging me to save herself. The diary's final line was a gut punch. If Ellie knows, she'll never forgive us. Forgive what? The lies? The fire that took his letters? Or something worse? Something that made my father run and my mother burn? I closed the diary, but its words clung to me, a stain I couldn't shake. The house was quiet now, but it felt like a trap, its silence hiding something that wanted to be found. I thought of Lena's scar, the note in my mailbox, the man who hung up. They were all threads, pulling me toward a truth that could break me. I wanted to stop, to shove the diary back in its drawer and pretend I'd never seen it, but I couldn't. The attic's shadows called, the ashes waiting, and I knew I'd go back, knew I'd keep digging until I found what they'd hidden. My mother's words, Victor's name, my father's absence. They were a map to something dark, something that could shatter everything I'd held on to. I was scared, not just of the truth, but of what it would make me. Would you keep searching for a truth that might break you? Tell me in the comments. I'm terrified of what's next. Next. The bar was a dive, its air thick with stale beer and regret, the kind of place where secrets go to drown and never resurface. I'd tracked the phone number from my mother's diary to this hole on the edge of town, chasing Victor, a ghost I didn't know but couldn't ignore. The neon sign flickered, casting shadows that moved like they had their own plans. My hands were clammy, the diary's words, Victor had to be silenced, burning in my mind. The rain had stopped, but the night felt wet, heavy, like the truth I was wading into. The bartender, a guy with a face like worn leather, knew Victor. Regular. Paid cash. Haven't seen him in weeks, he said, his eyes sliding away like he knew more than he'd tell. I leaned closer, my voice low, asking about my father, but he turned away, wiping the counter like it was his lifeline. I lingered, scanning the room. Men hunched over drinks, their faces carved with stories they'd never share. Behind the jukebox, I found a matchbook. Victor's name scrawled inside with an address, the ink shaky, like it was written in fear. The address led to a house on a dead-end street, its windows boarded up, blind and unyielding, like eyes sewn shut. It stared at me, daring me to knock, but I stood frozen, the matchbook heavy in my pocket. A neighbor, an old man with a cigarette dangling, saw me. "Victor, used to be your dad's buddy," he said, squinting. "Fell out years back. Money, maybe, or worse." His voice dropped, like he'd said too much, and I felt the ground shift, the truth closer but sharper, a blade I wasn't ready to catch. Back home, the attic called, its shadows thicker now, like they'd grown teeth. I knelt by the box, my hands trembling, and found a hidden flap I'd missed before. Inside, a single letter, unburned, its paper crisp. "Clara, Victor knows. I'm sorry." My father's words, a confession or a plea, I couldn't tell. Victor, knew what? The promise he broke? The reason he left? My heart raced, the house's creaks louder, like it was laughing at me for thinking I could stop now. The bar, the house, the letter, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was still. Blurry, a nightmare I was walking into wide awake. Lena's text, the note in my mailbox, the diary's warning, they all pointed to something bigger, something that made someone burn my father's heart to ash. I wanted to run, to bury the letter and pretend I'd never found it. But the attic's pull was stronger, its whispers louder. Victor was the key and he was gone, his silence a scream I couldn't ignore. The truth was out there, in that boarded-up house or the river where secrets drowned, and I'd find it, even if it tore me apart. The letter seared my hands, its words a fire I couldn't douse, my father's scrawl a wound that kept bleeding. "Clara, Victor knows. I'm sorry." I stood in Lena's kitchen, the letter trembling between us, her face pale as the linoleum floor. The house was quiet, but the silence felt alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for one of us to break. I'd come for answers, even if they burned me to the ground because the attic's ashes and my mother's diary had left me no choice. The truth was a splinter under my skin, and I'd rip myself open to get it out. "You're digging your own grave, Ellie," Lena said, her voice low, almost a growl, but her eyes were wet, caught between fear and something darker. I shoved the letter at her, demanding to know why she'd burned the others, why she'd erased him. She admitted Victor was their friend, back when our parents were still a family, but he'd turned on them, threatened to expose something my father did. "What?" I pressed, my voice cracking, but she shook her head, her lips tight, like she was swallowing glass. Online, I found an article, buried in a local paper's archive. Victor's body pulled from the river a month after my father left. No suspects, no answers, just a cold case that felt too hot in my hands. My stomach churned, the letter's words, "Victor knows," echoing like a warning. Had my father done this? Had my mother? Lena sobbed then, her hands covering her face, saying she'd burned the letters to protect me, to keep me from this truth. But her tears felt rehearsed, a performance for an audience of one, and I didn't trust her anymore. That night, the attic whispered my name, louder, closer, a voice that wasn't just the house. I climbed the stairs, the letter in my pocket, my flashlight cutting through the dark. The box sat there, its ashes still, but the air was heavy, like someone had just left. "Ellie!" The whisper came again, soft, chilling, and I spun, seeing nothing but shadows. My heart pounded, the letter's weight pulling me under. And I wondered if it was him, my father, or something worse, something that wanted me to stop. Lena's tears, the article, the whisper, they were a noose tightening around me. Victor's death wasn't an accident, and my father's absence wasn't just cowardice. The diary's words, the note in my mailbox, Lena's scar, they all pointed to a secret bigger than our family, something that made someone burn his love to ash. I wanted to believe Lena, to think she'd burned the letters for me. But her eyes held something else, guilt maybe, or fear of what I'd find next. The attic's chill clung to me, and I knew I was close, too close to a truth that could break us all. The river was a gray scar on the earth, its current a whisper of secrets I wasn't sure I could face. I stood on its banks. The letter. Clara. Victor knows, crumpled in my pocket, its words a pulse I couldn't shake. The air was cold, damp, the kind of chill that settles in your bones and stays. Victor died here, pulled from these waters, and I could feel him, his ghost or his truth, watching me. The attic's ashes had led me here, to this place where my father's past drowned, and I was terrified of what I'd pull from the depths. I clutched the letter, imagining my father's hands writing it, his guilt bleeding into the ink. A fisherman, nearby, his face weathered like the river's edge, saw me staring. "You looking for answers?" he asked, his voice rough. He remembered Victor, said he'd been asking about my father before he died. Too many questions, too many enemies. My heart stuttered. The diary's words had to be silenced, ringing in my ears. Victor had known something worth killing for, and I was walking the same path, my shoes sinking into the mud. In the diary, I'd found a storage unit key, hidden in a torn page, labeled Victor's Sins. It was a clue, a dare, and I followed it to a rusted unit on the edge of town. Inside, my father's life spilled out. Photos of us, his clothes, a gun etched with VR. The gun was heavy, cold, like it carried every lie he'd told. I stared at it, my hands shaking, wondering if he'd held it, if he'd used it. The unit smelled of dust and betrayal, and I felt him there, his absence louder than ever. Lena called as I left, her voice frantic, breaking through the static. "They're watching, Ellie. You're not safe." I froze, the gun in my bag, the fisherman's words in my head. Who was they? The ones who burned the letters? The ones who took Victor? The river's current seemed to laugh, its ripples hiding answers I was too close to finding. I wanted to run, to throw the gun into the water and forget. But the diary, the letter, the attic, they wouldn't let me go. The river remembered everything. Victor's questions, my father's secrets, the truth that drowned here. I stood there, the gun's weight pulling me down, and felt the eyes Lena warned about, their gaze a blade at my back. The letter's words burned. Victor knows. Knows what? The crime that broke my family? The reason my father ran? I was waiting, deeper, the water rising, and I knew the next step would either save me or pull me under. The attic waited at home, its shadows ready to whisper again, and I'd go back, because stopping now would be like letting him leave all over again. The gun was cold, a liar's weight in my hands, its etched initials, VR, a scream from the past. I stood in Lena's kitchen, the gun on the table between us, its metal glinting like it knew our secrets. Her eyes were wide, trembling, her voice a whisper. "It's not what you think, Ellie. Please." But I was done with her half-truths, her tears that felt like a trap. The attic's ashes, the diary's words, the river's ghosts. They'd led me here, to this moment where the truth was a bullet waiting to fire. The house was silent, but it felt like a storm, ready to break. Lena confessed, her words spilling like blood. My father and Victor ran a scheme, drugs, money, something dirty that ended in a body in the river. She said my father hadn't meant For it to happen that Victor's death was an accident, but her eyes flickered, dodging mine. My mother burned the letters to hide it, and Lena helped, terrified I'd uncover the truth and hate them both. I wanted to believe her, to see my sister in her tears. But the gun spoke louder, its weight telling me there was more. Something she was still hiding. Outside, a car idled, its headlights cutting through the dark like a warning. I recognized the driver, the man from the bar, his face sharp, unyielding. My heart raced, the note from my mailbox echoing, "Last warning, Ellie." Lena grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "They'll hurt you," she said, her voice breaking. But I pulled away, the gun in my bag, its coldness a tether to the truth. I was too close now, too deep in the web of my father's sins, and stopping would mean letting them win, whoever they were. I left, the car's engine a low growl behind me, the night pressing in like it wanted to swallow me whole. The diary's words, Victor's death, Lena's scar, they were pieces of a puzzle, but the picture was a nightmare I couldn't unsee. My father wasn't just a man who left. He was a man who'd killed, or covered it up, and my mother and sister had buried his secrets with him. The gun felt alive, a piece of him I hadn't known, and I wondered if I was becoming him, chasing a truth that would ruin me. Back home, the attic waited, its shadows thicker, hungrier. I held the gun, its weight a question I couldn't answer. Had he used it? Had he stood where I was, choosing between love and survival? Lena's confession, the car, the note. They were closing in, a noose tightening around my neck. I wanted to hate her, to hate him, but all I felt was fear, not of them, but of what I'd do when I found the truth. The house creaked, whispering, my name, and I knew I'd keep going, even if it meant losing everything. In the attic, I stood over the box, its ashes no longer a chain but a choice, their gray dust a map of the pain I'd carried. The house was silent, the rain gone, but the air held a weight, like it knew I'd reached the end. I'd chased my father's ghost through letters, diaries, a gun that spoke of blood, and now I was here, ready to let go or be consumed. The truth had cut me open, but it was mine to hold, to burn, to scatter. The attic's shadows watched, quiet now, waiting for me to decide who I'd be. I found the man from the bar, a shadow from Victor's past, in a diner that smelled of grease and despair. He said my father left to protect us, running from men Victor worked for, men who'd kill to keep their secrets. My father was alive, he said, hiding under a new name, a ghost who'd chosen exile over death. I wanted to hate him, to scream at the years he'd stolen, but his choice felt like love, twisted and broken, but love all the same. In the storage unit, I found his final letter, hidden in a box of his things. Ellie, I left because I loved you too much to stay. His words broke me, not with anger but with grief, for the father I'd never known, the man who'd sung lullabies and then run. I read it again, my tears smudging the ink, and saw him, not a villain, but a man trapped by his own mistakes, trying to save us from them. The gun, the diary, Lena's tears, they were his shadow. But this letter was his heart. I burned it in the attic, watching the flames curl, the ashes rising like a prayer. I didn't need the letters anymore, didn't need the gun or the secrets. I'd found him, not in the words, but in the choice to let them go. The house was still, its whispers gone, and I felt lighter, not whole, but free. Lena's lies, my mother's silence, Victor's death, they were scars, but they weren't me. I was Ellie, the girl who'd survived them, who'd chosen forgiveness over rage. The attic's floorboards creaked as I walked away, the box empty, the past scattered. I'd spent years hating him, chasing him, but now I saw the truth. Love, even broken, was worth fighting for. I'd lost him, lost Lena, lost the family I thought we were. But I'd found something else, myself, raw and real, ready to live, without their ghosts. This journey broke me, then rebuilt me. And if it hit you, smash that like button, share your story in the comments, and subscribe. Let's carry this forward together.